It's Friday, February 2nd. I'm Geoff Schwartz alongside Matt Ford. This is Geoff Schwartz, Smarter Than You, 1 week away-ish from the Super Bowl. Today's show will be focused with some gambling takes, but some overall coach news in National Football League. Nothing to gamble on this weekend. And we'll give you our early takes on the Super Bowl. We have a mailbag as well. And luckily for me, Matt, my dog just left the room because for those who do not know, I have I think he's 11 months now, 11-month-old German Shepherd. And he just barged in through the closed door because he figured out how to open doors. Not recently, something he figured out quite early, just to say hi. He doesn't. I love this dog's the best dog ever. And what's crazy, Matt, is that my wife was anti-dog. We had a dog when we were first together. We had a dog and a cat. All right, and
Really?
my son. We got the cat first. The best part about the cat, by the way, was that my wife thought it was going to be a pure white cat. So we called it Cotton, even though it ended up being like orange, like a yellow orange cat. It was the funniest thing ever. It was never white. I'm not sure we were given the cat we thought we were getting, but that's besides the point. So we had a dog and a cat, and we had a young son. The cat was mean. He would bite. Like it was like, you got to go. So we gave the cat to a friend. The cat's still alive. Still alive. We see Instagram pictures of the cat still alive. He's 13 years old. The new family loves the cat. I actually saw the woman who owns the cat like recently in Charlotte. She loves the cat. So great. He was rehomed. He was great. The dog, I was going to Detroit. We were having a second kid. It just wasn't, we couldn't do it. Gave the dog to a friend who had a big farm. I thought that was the end, Matt, of my time with animals. Because my wife was so anti-dog for so many years, like legitimately, like just never going to happen. And then one day she comes home with this dog. I don't know how to explain it, but he is a large German Shepherd, and he will get larger, and he's very bright. And he just wants attention sometimes. That's what they are. It's what German Shepherds are. I was right at the Peloton today. He sat literally right next to my pedal. I'm like, dude, move out of the way. I'm going to hit you with my pedal. Like he's a German Shepherd, man. He wants to be by my side the entire time.
It's pretty special. It sounds like you were negotiating with your son to get him down the stairs, and you said something like, "Can you manage to close the door with the dog?" And I thought you were being an ass, but you were being serious because you have yourself a Trent Williams, not an Isaiah Pacheco. It sounds like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's probably 70 pounds right now, and my son is 65 pounds. And I'm trying to get him to walk him down the stairs with a leash on. Like it's a lot. The trainer we got him from said, like, look, your kids can't work with a dog till they're like 11 or 12. They're just not big enough. So I try to keep them away from having to do that. But it has been fun. We've had him for about 2 months now. To see my kids, Matt, like take a lot of responsibility on with doing stuff with the dog, and also just the relationship with the dog. Like again, my dog came from a training center, like he's been raised to be a great German Shepherd, all those things. And he had never seen a kid before, quite honestly, until we brought him home. And so he's trying to figure out like how to be with the kids. And they figured it out. And it's great. Like he comes about 3:00 when the kids come off the bus. He sits in the family room, like wait at the door. Like he knows they're coming. He's waiting for them. So it's very sweet. I love having the dog. It's a lot of fun. And yeah, it's when Matt, you have about 9 years till your kid gets to be about my kid's age, and you can get a dog again.
Can't wait. Yeah, we went to the doctor today. My son is 14 pounds. His son's got 50 on him.
Wow, 14. My kids. My son is like 85th percentile for height and like 50 for weight, and my daughter is like 99 for both or 97 for both. So. It is odd when my kids basically weigh the same amount. And I'm jealous of my son because he is like super thin, not like thin, like sickly, but just like thin and kind of like he swims now. So his upper body's getting a little bit yoked. And I just was never, like, he'll never have to worry about like what calories he puts in his body ever in his life. I don't think, because he's just thin. And I'm jealous of him already. And he's 9.
Yeah. Well, that seems healthy all the way around. Congrats to Alex for that. Yeah, I mean, this is what happens. Now we have the week between the Super Bowl and the rest of and the rest of football. And this is like such a strange week. So get used to this. This is what's coming for the next couple months.
I saw a TikTok that was great. It was something like, "What do we do?" Or like, it was maybe a wife was saying like, "Do we get our kids, our husbands back like after football?" And this guy laid out this whole calendar of like the sporting events that are coming up: March Madness, the Masters, the PGA Championship, the draft, the NBA Final. I mean, it's just not football, right? It's just not football. And so this weekend there is, I believe, the Senior Bowl is on. Whatever bastardization of the Pro Bowl is this weekend. I mean, last night I think we're skills competition, buddy. I did not even pay 1 second to that. Did you?
Yeah, well, my cousin's in Orlando, and we'll get to football in a second. He's in Orlando, and he's like, "Should I go to the Pro Bowl?" And I was like, "I don't even really know what you would see if you went to the Pro Bowl this weekend. Here. Like, it used to be more stuff happening in your background. It was like an actual football game, and it's not anymore. So I don't know. Should we?
You're about to get your wish, buddy, because the dog is coming. Is the dog's coming? Oh,
good. All right. Now. Hopefully we'll get to see him in the course of the show. Nick, if you catch him, go to a single.
I saw one clip of Jason Kelce like firing back a football in a long snap. I could actually long snap, by the way. That would have been a competition I could have done really well at. But obviously, I'm not a Pro Bowler, which is the prerequisite to be in there. So now that we're getting back to football, where would you like to start,
Dad? A Pro Bowl dog dad.
Oh, here he is.
Yes.
Buddy, because my kids are going, dude. I told you, guys. He's only 11 months old. Look at him. He's massive dog.
Oh my gosh!
It's a massive dog.
What a good man.
Look. That's so cute, man. Like your kids are. Take him by the leash, babe, and put him in the thing. He's just like so excited.
I am imagining this will not make the audio cut.
There he goes. Thank you, buddy. All right, stay. All right, have fun, kid. All right, now here we go. Let's do a show. All right,
I enjoyed that so much. I was gonna do a little Carl Weathers off the top, but maybe we'll save that to the end. R.I.P. To the Predator and Apollo Creed.
Jeez, the three-year Letterman put out a picture of Mel Gibson and Danny Glover on purpose, and people are not taking it the right way because that's what his account is, kind of like a goof account. And he's like, R.I.P. Carl Weathers, and he put Danny Glover and Mel Gibson, and it made me laugh way too much. Obviously, Carl Weathers, man. I mean, like just our childhood of movies, right? The Rockies,
absolutely.
Predator, which is like the best, worst movie of all time.
Oh, it's a fantastic movie. I to bring this back to football, I went to the NFL draft in Philly, working on Good Morning Football, and he was staying at the hotel where we stayed at. And I saw him a few times. Then I rode an elevator once, and it was just me and Carl Weathers. And Carl Weathers, I mean, this was, probably 6-7 years ago. He was, an older guy, like astonishingly, like mind-blowingly handsome man, like still like super fit, just like striking. So I get in the elevator with him, and I'm like, I just kind of like look at him because you're like, holy shit, this is Apollo Creed in the elevator with me. And so I just kind of like nod to him, and he goes, yes, it's me. And then I got off the elevator, really psyched.
Seriously?
About that.
That's what he said?
Yes.
He said, yeah, it's me?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Like, yes, it's me. It was amazing. Yeah,
okay. So this is an offshoot. Look, I'm not like I told you my movie preference is just like, are you entertaining or not? Like, I'm not like one of these people that's like, did it win awards or anything? Like, is it entertaining or not? The Creed movies have been incredible. Like are they better than Rocky movies? Are they better than the Rocky franchise? Or just because they're like the new effects, movie. Like the new effects and just sort of the new everything. The last one was okay. It was like, all right. I mean, like we're getting to the end of this probably run, right?
I don't know, man. People still see it.
Unless it's his daughter next. Unless his daughter starts fighting. That's what I think. Like, fast forward 12 years, his daughter starts fighting.
Creed 11. I like that. We're gonna get there at some point, buddy. R.I.P. Carl Weathers, and let's get to the football news here. Perhaps R.I.P. in advance to my Commanders, who hired the Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator and former Falcons head coach Dan Quinn. to take over as the head coach.
Yes.
Reminder, this was the guy who was last seen giving up 50 points to Jordan Love in a playoff game, his first ever playoff game, while the defense was at home. So I obviously have some thoughts on this, but the people are here to hear yours, not mine. So what do you think about this hire, and is there any hope for my stupid team?
Okay. So, interesting hire. It's one thing I think we're doing now, Matt, with these hires is we're not just like grading them immediately, right? Like we're not doing this whole thing anymore. We're like, it's A, F, D, C. Like we're just not doing that, right? Because we've seen over the years that that's foolish, right? Some of the hires that we think are the best end up being poor. Some hires like Dan Quinn that are clearly not the first guy for the Commanders end up being good hires for teams, right? It just sort of happens. The things that make coaches good, I think we're sort of nailing down on more, better lately, right? Which is the staff you hire, right? The staff you hire and the quarterback you have. Two very important things. And the thing about Dan Quinn is he has shown he can hire coaches. In Atlanta, his 2016 team, which ended up being in the Super Bowl, Kyle Shanahan, Raheem Morris, Matt LaFleur, Mike LaFleur, Mike McDaniel, Geoff Albrecht. So Geoff is the DC, right, in with the Jets. McDaniel's a head coach. Matt's a head coach. Morris is a head coach. Shanahan's a head coach. So if Dan Quinn, Matt, can hire the same caliber of coaches and also hit on Drake May or Jaden Daniels, this would be a good hire. If he hires bad coaches, specifically on offense, and you bring a new quarterback, it's a bad hire. The one thing that you have to always worry about when you bring in defensive coaches is that when the offensive coordinator does well, he's gone, right? So that's the issue with a defensive guy is D'Amico Ryans, right? Good coach, we know that. He hired Bobby Slowick as the OC. Bobby Slowick will be a head coach after next season. He interviewed this year. He's super young, probably not ready for that job yet. He will get it next season. Dan Campbell, Ben Johnson stayed. We'll talk about that in a second. He's an offensive guy, though. So if you lose Ben Johnson, you can still sort of survive. Then you need someone else, obviously. Andy Reid, Kyle Shanahan, these guys lose guys. They're the primary play caller. The Rams have lost their OC, feels like every single season, Matt. And they survive because Sean McVay is the play caller. So the concern of this hire to me is that part of it. But look, man, Dan Quinn was a great DC in Seattle, was good with the Cowboys, hired a good staff in Atlanta. Now, obviously, quarterback matters, right? Like if they land a home run with Drake May, man, or Jaden Daniels, maybe they trade up to one. The Bears seem sort of wishy-washy on the idea of Caleb Williams. Then, Matt, it's a huge win. If they whiff on that and he has bad coaches, sorry, you fire him in 3 years and you hire someone else.
Yeah. I think you're right. And I think, zooming out of this coaching cycle, which, we're going to talk about McDonald in Seattle in a second. There's just not that many more of these offensive young hotshots to hire. Like when you look at, the people who got hired and then the people who didn't get hired, I mean, the only one really was Callahan, who was not really on anyone's radar as like a hotshot offensive mind coming into this offseason. Bobby Slowick maybe, but that felt like it might have been a year too early. Like this was his first year as an OC. Ben Johnson we'll get to, but the league sort of over-indexed on these hotshot offensive minds. So now there's these candidates who, a few years ago, Raheem Morris, Dan Quinn, you look at them, not dissimilar from the Ron Rivera hire for Washington a few years ago, where, you say like, hey, these guys have been head coaches before. They've earned it, working their way back in the coordinator ranks, but they're on the wrong side of the ball. And I think now we're sort of just seeing, when Mike Vrabel gets left on the sidelines, when Pete Carroll and Belichick obviously get left on the sidelines, it's because there's these like pretty viable defensive guys who are sitting out there. And look, I mean, I mentioned on this show, I really liked Raheem Morris. I thought that I would have preferred him over Dan Quinn, I think, just as a fan. But, the Quinn hire, like, it makes sense. It seems as though he was not their first choice. I thought that your tweet actually was the winning tweet of this whole thing, where it showed him in the line at DCA, the DC Reagan Airport, flying back to wherever he lives after that interview, where he just, he was alone. It wasn't like he was like waving to adoring fans. Like he was just you know, he was like, all right, I'll like bomb that one. Like, guess I'm going back to coach Michael
He
Parsons for
looked,
another year.
he did not look like a guy that won the job interview. Put it like
Or
that.
that he was like super fired up about the opportunity either. But I think it was just sort of this marriage of convenience. And then this Ben Johnson wrinkle, something about it was fishy the whole time. So Ben Johnson seemed like he was the target. Like everybody said, I mentioned in our group text, they mentioned it on the broadcast in the Lions game. It said, Kevin Burkhardt said, this guy's probably the coach of the Commanders, which just so you guys listening know, like if you work on the commentators get a chance to talk to these coaches, like
Yes.
behind closed doors, no other media, and there's this sort of like agreement of like you're not going to say anything that's like directly traceable, but when they say something like that on the broadcast, it's because either Dan Campbell or Ben Johnson said that to them. So I was like, when I heard that, I was like,
Well, Matt,
this
not
is
only
done.
that, Matt, they're allowed to say it. Because
Yeah,
like there's things that like in these production meetings that you hear that are not really for consumption outside of the meeting room. And
correct.
you can hint at that sometimes. And we hear guys hint like, well, you know what, man, like, the coaches say is the wide receiver doesn't like that's coming from them in those meetings. And you can give sort of sly references to it, but to come out like to your
Yeah.
point about Kevin Burkhardt saying like, this is something that we believe, that means that he's hearing that, he has heard that, his agents heard that, but that it's for public consumption now.
Yeah, it's sourced. Like it's real. It wasn't just
Yes.
conjecture. So that's what's so weird about this story is, he before he was not, given any jobs, he basically took himself out of the running, goes back to Detroit. Bobby Slowick did the same thing. But for Johnson specifically, there was a report today from our mutual friend, I think Mike Garafolo,
Yeah.
who said that he actually removed his name from consideration because he tanked the interview so hard. And I found that to be that Mike's a great reporter. That kind of makes sense because it seems like he would have been able. There was this report of who he's commanding so much money. Like I don't think that was an issue. I think that maybe he interviewed other places too. So something happened there that maybe has prevented him from taking that big swing. But I'm really curious what you make of him specifically, because he was the hottest girl at the dance this coaching cycle, right? Like everybody thought every team wanted him to take over, but here he is going back to Detroit.
I think Phil has something to say.
Wow, right?
Jeez, buddy, my dog's attacked me again. It seems the reporting of Garafolo and Schefter make it clear that he was not guaranteed this job. Right now, Schefter even mentioned this like last week. Like he's not guaranteed to not guaranteed to get a job. He's not guaranteed to get a job.
You're just listening. I'm literally watching Geoff's dog eat the microphone.
German Shepherd's very land sharky. I think that it seemed clear that this was not his job to be had after we hear those remarks from Schefter and from Mike. And the question becomes obviously like, why is that, right? And Mike mentioned the interview process. We heard this for a lot with Eric Bieniemy, right? The interviews didn't go well. And like, what does that mean? What does it mean when the interview doesn't go well? And so to me, it's not about the personality not working. It's like, to me, it's the plan, right? Like when you go to these meetings, you should have a plan of obviously like who you're going to hire. And I think when you're 36, like, is it Ben Johnson 36? I'm at 37. Yeah. You might not have a great list of candidates to hire. He might not have a great idea of like who his OC, DC, special teams coach is going to be. And maybe that's part of like tanking the interviews, like not being prepared with those answers. I feel like he could go into a meeting and tell everyone exactly how he's going to call an offense, call a defense, or wants to call a defense. But who are you going to hire? Personnel, like those things, I think to me are the things that we talk about when far as tanking, are those. And maybe Adam Peters decided the new GM. He's like, look, man, too young, one guy with experience. It's my first time being a general manager. I can't pair him with a first time coach. I'm gonna go. So those are all part of this process. Again, Dan Quinn will be good if he hires a good OC and a good OC and nails the quarterback pick. So Matt, let's take our break now because I want to
ask one thing about.
Okay, go ahead.
Can I ask one thing quickly about this?
Yes, go ahead. Yes.
The one rumored offensive coordinator is a name
Chip
familiar to
Kelly.
you, Mr. Chip Kelly.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
All right. So Chip, the thing with Chip Kelly is that this is a larger topic for college football. We can maybe save for another time, but Chip does not want to do the head coaching things of college football, the schmoozing, the glad handing, the recruiting, the talking to 17-year-olds. It's not his thing. He wants to coach. And I think he can be a fabulous offensive coordinator who just does offense, right? You give him Drake May, give him Jane Daniels, and I think he can figure out exactly how to design an offense that works for the personnel he has. I don't think he wants to be in charge. I think he'd be a great hire, Matt. Put it like that. I think he would do a great job as just the OC, right? It's all he's in charge of. It's just calling the offense. I think he'd be a really good hire. He wants out. He interviewed 3 times with the Raiders and with Iowa.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, part of the over-indexed on the offensive minds thing. Cliff Kingsbury's coming back to the NFL to work with Antonio Pierce, right? Chip Kelly might come back. It's like there just aren't any more of these mid-30s whiz kids sitting around to get these offensive coordinator jobs anymore.
Liam Cohen's back now from the college football to Tampa Bay. I think you're right. There's just not a lot of these kind of quote unquote offensive gurus still around. So young ones. So that's why we are where we're at. All right, Matt, we're going to take that break right now. We'll be right back. If you're listening live on the radio. We'll run a nice ad for you. Back in just a second. All right, we're back, Matt. By the way, my wife and both my kids are still home, so thanks for the help on that one there. My dog is attacking me while I'm trying to work. All right, let's go down the coaching tree. What do we got next?
Yeah, so the speaking of whiz kids, the Seahawks hired Ravens defensive coordinator Mike Macdonald.
Yeah,
everyone loves the match because he's done really well against the Shanahan offense, the McVay offense. So an interesting sort of zag for them, another defensive guy getting a shot. This was probably my second choice after the Ben Johnson thing happens for Washington. So probably jealous of Seattle here. What do you think of this one?
Okay, what about this? Like, why is this a good hire? I'm just like sort of curious.
Interesting. Well, I think when you looked at sort of the Ravens pieces this year, Clowney, Van Noy, obviously Kyle Hamilton, Kyle Hamilton was good, but he turned into this like amazing player. The Ravens arguably had the best defense in the league this year. But the personnel didn't exactly match, right? Like it wasn't the Dallas defense that Dan Quinn had. It wasn't, some of these other like elite groups. And it seems like he maximized that. It seems like, we haven't talked about another person who's managed to sort of wrap their head around the Shanahan offense from the defensive side. So from a scheme sense, seems like he knows what he's doing. But interesting, you seem maybe not among the groupthink on this one, which is probably a good thing.
Well, I'm just like curious, like what makes him a better coach than Dan Quinn, other than he just is young and he does well against Shanahan offenses. I don't know.
Or Pete Carroll.
Like that's the thing that's just we have no track record with him. All we know is NFL people think he's going to be good. Like that, and look, NFL people thought D'Amico Ryans was going to be good too, and he's a good coach. But D'Amico has C.J. Stroud. Who does Mike McDonald have? Who's his quarterback? Again, I know we're oversimplifying things here, Matt. But it comes down to that a lot of times. Look at the final 8 teams in the National Football League. I believe that the Bills had a defensive coach, right? And they had Josh Allen. And then like the Texans, obviously. Okay, so the final 8 teams, ready? Texans, defensive coach got blown out. Well, that happens, right? Against the Ravens, special teams coach, Packers, Niners, offense. Chiefs, Bills, offense, defense. That one has Josh Allen. And then Lions, Bucks. So Bulls, obviously, and the Lions and Dan Campbell's offensive coach. I mean, these offensive coaches, I think for like 5 or 6 years in a row now, have met in the Super Bowl since the last one was probably Belichick in 2018, I think. It's just, I'm not saying you can't hire a defensive coach, but you got to give him that quarterback. And C.J. Stroud is that guy, is that quarterback. So the question becomes, obviously, who's Mike McDonald going to have a quarterback? Because if he has Geno Smith, they're just going to be okay. If he obviously has someone better, then they'll be better. But I'm just so curious. I've sort of not have come around on coaching hires. I think that we don't know who's going to be good, who's not going to be good. Take Nick Sirianni, for example, right? Remember we laughed at Nick Sirianni, Matt, and then he hired Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon, and he was good all of a sudden. And then he wasn't good last year with bad coordinators, and now he hired Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio, and I figure he'll be good next season. I mean, Matt, like it's not that hard, right? Sometimes, and so McDonald seems like a great young coach. There's nothing against him, but I don't know, Matt. I have no idea. Other than NFL people saying he's going to be a good coach.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think this is a really good point from you. It's that it's a coordinators league as much as it is a coach league. And, even with, I don't know, like you looked at one of the reasons we really like the Dolphins this year was Vic Fangio. Now a reason people are going to really like the Eagles is going to be Vic Fangio, right? Like Dallas, it'll be interesting to see what they do without Dan Quinn. Like it does matter. And I think that, I think part of what people really want now is sort of leadership and like executive sort of management in a way that from their head coach in a way that they didn't really. And I think that's why a team like Washington wants someone like a Dan Quinn to just come in and do what Ron Rivera was sort of supposed to do, which is like reset the culture. And, this is a big change. Like Pete Carroll was that for Seattle for a long time. And now this first time head coach is going to come in with, kind of a mixed bag of a team. Like there's veterans sort of all over the place on that team, but there's also a lot of young players.
Yeah.
Like it's just going to be an interesting, I can't tell what direction they're headed in, right? Is this like a aggressive win now hire, or is this we're going to sort of take our time and figure out what we are kind of hire? And so that's really interesting. Maybe they aren't really thinking about it that way, but also interesting too. And for both the coaching hires we've talked about, 2 defensive coaches, neither of them were Mike Vrabel, neither of them were Bill Belichick, neither of them were Pete Carroll. Yeah. Now that the dust is settled, what do you make of that? And do you think let's go through each? Let's do Vrabel first. Like, what do you think happens with him? Do you think that this was an indictment of him, or what do you think's going on with that?
Okay, so start with Belichick very quickly. Belichick very, very simply just wants player personnel control. I feel like everyone just said no, right? He wants to do things his way, and that's the end of it. Pete Carroll, older coach, probably very specific on what he wants to do, even though he was less in charge of the roster when Snyder was in charge of the roster there. The Vrabel thing is, it seems, based off of last season, he might be hard to work with, right? Tennessee should have blown everything up last year and gone back to the studs. They were not winning this season with the roster they had. Yet they went ahead and signed DeAndre Hopkins and rolled with Tannehill for a little bit, and then went to Will Levis and back to Tannehill with some injuries. Like they should have gone 2-17, 2-15, I should say, and drafted in the top 3, Matt. Like that's what they should have done. And Vrabel sounded like refused to do that last season. And he just seemed to never get along with the new general manager. they think so highly of the GM. They gave him a promotion recently.
Yeah.
Like they made him like VP of player. They gave him a bigger title than GM, right? So, like, I just think that Vrabel's hard to work with. And you look at some of these places like Seattle, John Schneider, their GM, is controlling the roster. If Mike Vrabel's not coming in there and taking that roster room, maybe Washington, Adam Peters is like, yeah, man, like I'm controlling the roster. Harbaugh, for example, they hired him before the general manager. They're telling you who is in charge of the roster, Jim Harbaugh. That's a big fight, right? And I think it's hard to do both at a high level. Coach and Belichick for a long time did it well until he didn't. Andy Reid famously got to Kansas City after doing this in Philly, was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And let John Dorsey and Brett Veach shoot. Now, of course, Andy Reid has a say on if they're drafting Patrick Mahomes, all right? But he doesn't have a say on who the second-round corner is they're drafting. Like, that's not Andy Reid's job. It shouldn't be. Andy Reid's job is to coach the football team he has and to prepare to win each and every week. His job shouldn't be having to watch. There's a kid out of Toledo. I think his name is Quinton Mitchell. He's a cornerback, and he's going to be a first-round draft pick. He's played really well. I don't expect Andy Reid to be watching Toledo film after the Super Bowl. Like, I don't. No offense to Toledo. You know what I mean? Like, I don't expect him to do that. That's a general manager's job to be in charge of doing that. And so I think it's hard to do both at a high level. And you look at the teams that Vrabel was talking to, it just they weren't going to let him have that control. And that a lot of coaches want that control, and he wasn't going to get it.
Yeah. I think it's probably true for Carroll too, right? Like the reason Seattle said goodbye to Russell Wilson was likely Pete Carroll, with him saying like, well, I can make Geno Smith into a playoff level quarterback. And these older school coaches, like if I'm Bill Belichick, like, and frankly, like if you're coming at it from like somebody who's like in a normal job, like if I hired, Lauren, if Blue Duck hired Lorne Michaels to produce this show and I was his boss, like it would be kind of weird, right? It's like, I don't know what to tell him to do. Like he's better than me. And I think that like a GM, like, let's just take Adam Peters or John Schneider or whoever, like, how are they going to tell Bill Belichick, like, no, actually your grade on this corner is wrong. And like, you haven't drafted well in a decade. Like it's a hard thing to say. So I'm not surprised that, it seems like the structure of these successful teams, it's like, is the GM good, right? Is the head coach good? Is the quarterback good? And this year, especially, it's like, is the offensive line good? And the rest of it just kind of takes care of itself. So I think, I think we'll definitely see Vrabel back with another team next year. I don't know if we'll ever see Belichick again, which is crazy. I think Pete Carroll, we can safely assume probably not. But wow, what an unceremonious end to the era of both Bill Belichick and Pete Carroll. They, Pete Carroll didn't even get an interview from what I understand. So, pretty tough.
That doesn't surprise me with the Carroll thing. Are you going to bring in Lorne Michaels to produce your Belichick podcast?
I think no, we can safely delegate that one to Hank Groberg. He'll be terrific.
Okay,
speaking of young people who are doing their job for the first time, Zach Orr taking over for Baltimore's defensive coordinator. Just a nice story. He was a nice player before he got injured.
Yeah,
so good for him. So we have a couple things left to do here, Geoff. We've got our mailbag. We have a check-in on our betting, our props and stuff from last week. But we also still need to talk about the Super Bowl a little bit. So I guess let me just check in there. Like, we're sitting here a week and change out. The teams are going to head to Vegas next week and the circus starts. Right now, how are you feeling about the game? I imagine you're going to be picking Kansas City, but I'm curious just sort of what you've been thinking about this week.
So the first wager I made was Kansas City money line immediately on Sunday. I have not felt this good about Kansas City winning the Super Bowl in a while. I thought last year was going to be tough, right? Playing the Eagles. I thought the first Super Bowl was going to be tough, different Niners team. I just think there's a lot of areas where the Chiefs have an advantage, okay? Quarterback, one. Start there, right? I mean, we talk about this often. It's a quarterback league. I mean, look, is Brock – are we going to look back in history and think Brock Purdy is beating Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl? Look, Eli Manning beat Tom Brady. Eli Manning is going to be a Hall of Famer. Whether you like him or not, is a Hall of Famer. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. He might be the Hall of the best of the rest. You know what I mean? Like he might not be Hall of Elite player, but he's be a Hall of Famer. He played his two best postseason runs of his lifetime, and he beat the Patriots twice. Okay. The throw that he made to Mario Manningham in the second Super Bowl, then the second Super Bowl, right? The one, the Mario Manningham. Brock Purdy would never make that throw in his entire life. Okay. It's never going to happen. All right.
Hall of Fame throw. Yep.
Okay. Never going to happen. So I can't compute that in my brain, Matt. It's a team game. I get it, but it's also a quarterback game, right? The Chiefs have a major advantage with their defensive line against the Niners offensive line. Trent Williams, really good. You put your worst pass rusher and you say, just have fun trying that. And you put Chris Jones and you put Karlaftis on the other side where you have a huge advantage and you just pressure Purdy. Something interesting from my buddy Guy Haberman, who covers the 49ers, does the podcast with John Middlecoff. He mentioned something that's really interesting, and it's worth discussing because it's true. He said the problem with Brock Purdy being a little bit undersized is when he gets hit in the pocket, the ball goes everywhere. Like when Mahomes gets hit, Matt, the ball still goes straight. When Josh Allen gets hit, the ball still goes where it's supposed to go. If Purdy gets hit at all when he is throwing, the ball just sprays all over the place because he's not strong enough to control his body as he's being hit. The Chiefs are going to hit him. They're going to hit him a lot, Matt. And I love DVOA. I love EPA. I love all those numbers, Matt. But I feels a little bit like you can't take what the Chiefs did the first 18 weeks and use that for right now. They're a different team right now. They've turned it on. They're playing better right now. So I think the Chiefs win this game. Look, is it 7 points or less? Probably. Super Bowl. Games tend to be close. But I have made, I think, 4 wagers. Well, the Chiefs money line, 5 wagers so far. I got this from Bill Krakenberg. It's worth betting when he sent it to me. I can't bet all the wagers he has because I'm not using offshore. Longest punt for the Niners, over 55.5 yards. I hit that one already.
God, everyone loves this one. The Action Network guys are all over this. Wishnowski.
But I got it at 55.5. I think it's at 56.5 now. I also like Rashee Rice over receptions and yards. The Niners are very static on defense. They do not move. They stay still. I think Rice is number 1 or 2 in the NFL in yards after the catch. Like he catches the ball and just jets upfield. I think he will be open a lot in this game. And then I have Brandon Ayuk under receptions and under yards. I go back to this again. The Chiefs tend to lock up the number 1 wideout. The reason why Zay Flowers was over last week was that one blown coverage. And so that's where I'm sitting right now, Matt. I've been hitting this one a lot the last couple of weeks. I took Pacheco, by the way, over 15.5 yards for his longest rush of the game.
Fair enough.
I don't know if I'm going to do much else. I'm going to not be I won't be until Vegas till Thursday. By then it's like there's no value in some of these props unless you take the unders as people hammer the overs. Yeah. So that's where I'm at right now. I might do Samuel Debo over his props because I'm taking the under for Ayuk, just sort of pairing those up together. I mean, they got to move the ball a little bit, I feel like. So that's where I'm at right now with the wagers I have. How do you feel about the game?
I'm just sort of starting to really dive in. The thing that I agree, I'm on Kansas City, but I think, I feel like I'm a little bit of like the player at the blackjack table who was like, yeah, all right, I'll get up soon. Let me just play this last hand. And throughout the playoffs, I've just been on the Chiefs the whole time. And every week they've won and covered and been underdogs. So I'm sort of like, okay, like I guess I'm doing this again. One last hit. You don't leave the table on a hot streak. That's kind of how it feels. But I agree with you. Like when you look across the board, like there's a couple things about this team. You mentioned Purdy already. The Chiefs are the hotter team. The Chiefs have looked stronger and better and smarter in how they've sort of attacked the teams they've played.
Yeah.
If you look at the 49ers, like it's kind of crazy to say this. If you even just look back through the last month or so, other than the time where they absolutely smoked the Commanders, which was weirdly close for a half, they probably should have lost last week. They probably should have lost to the Packers. They did lose to the Rams. And they did get smoked by the Ravens. Like they have not really looked as good as they've felt in a long time. So in the Chiefs, like we're just past being concerned about the Chiefs, right? The Chiefs are who they are. Yeah. They step up. Like they're going to be at the level they need to be to win this game, even if they lose. So, one of the other things too is like Kyle Shanahan, last week, Kyle Shanahan was not the dumber coach. It was Dan Campbell, unfortunately for Lions fans. Kyle Shanahan's going to have to sort of like do things that are beyond just like managing the game. Like there's going to be a clock issue. You like Reed over Shanahan in the big decision spots. There's going to be a big decision to make of whether you go for it or don't. Like I like Reed over Shanahan when it comes to
Shanahan
decisions.
will he'll always kick a field goal. Shanahan will.
Yeah, and you like Mahomes to make those money throws more than Purdy. You like the Kansas City defense to get another play, maybe more than the San Francisco defense. So I think I'm not exactly sure. I think the public side probably would agree with me throughout. Yeah. So I'm really surprised still that the 49ers are favored because the Sharps just
power
must be all over. Yeah, the Sharps must just be all over the 49ers.
Which is the same thing they had the Ravens. So by the way, we'll finish with one stat before we get to the mailbag questions. Worst first half point differential in the playoffs leading up to the Super Bowl in NFL history. Okay, worst first half point differential in the playoffs. The Niners have the second worst point differential, -16 in the first half, and the team above them and the 5 teams below them have all lost in the Super Bowl. So the Chargers in 94 were -22. The Niners blew them out. That's the Steve Young 6-touchdown game. But in our lifetime, really, the 2014 Seahawks were -12. That was the Malcolm Butler game. They lost to New England that game. And then the 2012 Niners were -7, and they lost to Baltimore in that game. So, again, to your point about like sort of not playing quite the same as they had previously, that's a good way. Look, and Tuesday, guys, everyone, Tuesday we'll be in Los Angeles. The 3 of us will have Vaulted. I talked to Vaulted today, yesterday, I should say. They're going to get the pool out for us. Remember, $5,000 will be for the big game. We'll have prize picks. We'll have Gabe. We'll have Matt. We'll be all together in Los Angeles. That'll be a lot of fun. We'll do that Tuesday afternoon. Let's get to mailbag questions. Actually, for the first time, Matt, we got like 12 questions on the mailbag. Let's get to our favorite ones of them before we call it a weekend.
Yeah, let's do that. We sort of touched on this, but this is the kind of show where we would go deeper. From Todd Rogers, who has the edge in the trenches? How big is it if Tooney can't go for Kansas City?
Well, the best player in the trenches is Trent Williams, obviously. And Tooney probably will not play, is my guess. But the Niners, outside Trent Williams' offensive line is just okay. Just is. The Chiefs overall, I think, have the better talent on both sides of the ball. They're playing really well right now. Obviously, losing Amenahue is a big deal for Kansas City. He was a big part of what they do. They mentioned having to use their rookie more, which is not great in the Super Bowl. Hasn't played very much this season. But they lost him in the second quarter last week and we're fine, right, Matt? So they lost him, unfortunately, right after he strip sacked Lamar. The next drive, I think he tore his ACL. But Chris Jones, by the way, in 3 Super Bowls, Matt, has 0 quarterback hits and 0 sacks in 3 Super Bowls. I thought that's going to change this weekend. Next weekend. So I think the Chiefs have the advantage in the trenches this weekend. I think that the Niners might still run the ball well, but it's the Chiefs.
Yeah, so that sort of dovetails into the next question, which is from Braden. Which 49ers offensive skill player will have the biggest game in the Super Bowl? I'm sure this is a guy looking to bet an over. What would you say to him?
I mean, I think if you're looking at someone, it's probably Debo. We've talked about this a lot, where we have the Chiefs tend to take away number 1, and number 1 is Brent Ayuk, right? Sort of the number 1 wide receiver. And I think they're going to focus on Christian McCaffrey, like not let him beat us. Someone else has to be open, and that someone else is probably Debo in the slot against one of the Chiefs wide receiver, one of the Chiefs linebackers, maybe. But I'll tell you, if Trent McDuffie travels with Debo, maybe you're looking at someone else, right? I mean, that's a fun part about this game. The Chiefs have 2 all-pro level cornerbacks, Snead and McDuffie. Hard to score on someone. You have 2 of those guys, right, Matt? It allows them to bring a lot of pressure. So I think I could see like Juszczyk having a weirdly, gets a bunch of receptions and stuff in the flat. We saw the last 3 weeks, the Chiefs have really sort of allowed teams underneath to catch the ball and then rally and tackle really well. I'm kind of curious what a juice receptions would be at. If it's like 1.5, I might take the over. I'm kind of curious about what that would be right now. Unfortunately, man, this offshore life it ends March 11th, buddy. And it's March 11th when we get full speed ahead here for legal sports wagering in North Carolina.
Love that for you. Hopefully, California will get there one day. I think the odds makers have juiced Christian McCaffrey's rushing props very high. The Chiefs' defense, their weakness is the rush, which again goes back to why the Ravens called the game that they did last week. They gave up about 4.5 yards a carry, which that's what the Ravens gave up to, I guess. But that is sort of the weak point. They're in the range of teams like the Cardinals and Commanders and the Saints, like generally sort of weaker teams. So I think that if you're the 49ers, you're coming into this and you're saying, we're going to run the ball. We're going to run it a lot. You mentioned Debo. I think Debo is probably going to get a bunch of carries just to sort of mix it up, because I think, the Chiefs' plan is going to be to stop McCaffrey, right? They're going to be okay if Ayuk and maybe Kittle to some degree beat them, if they're worried about McCaffrey, then Samuel, then Kittle probably. So, I do think that they're going to have they're going to probably aim to succeed running the ball, and Kyle Shanahan knows how to do that. All right, moving away from the Super Bowl here to our next mailbag questions. Jeff M asks, how do you think the 4 new members of the Big Ten will do in football this season?
Ooh, good question.
Chip Kelly, you're going to leave to be my team's offensive coordinator, so we'll see how that goes for UCLA. But what about the others?
Oregon's going to be fine. They have a great recruiting talent right now. They have one or two top portal class. They're going to be fine. USC is interesting, man. They hire new defensive coaches, Matt, which is great. They needed to do that. They also need better players now. They hired Danton Lynn, who's UCLA's defensive coordinator. UCLA had a great year on defense, for those who might not have paid attention. They also have a top 10 pick at pass rusher in Latu Latu. Like, USC doesn't have that on their roster right now. It helps to have good football players. They need better football players. But looking around like a coach offense, they're going to be fine, I think. UCLA is just – they're destined for 6 to 8 wins every year, I feel like. And Washington has lost, I think, all 22 starters from the playoff game through the portal and through the NFL. They're going to be fine eventually, Matt, but they're going to struggle for the first couple of years. They don't have anyone on their roster right now. With Jed Fish, he'll get it right. But I think right now Washington's gonna have some trouble. It is worth pointing out that we have not seen much of the Power 5 to Power 5 conference realignments. Those teams sort of pan out to be really good in the new conference. We've seen Group of 5 go up, Utah, TCU. But we haven't seen much of that. But Oregon is they got a lot of talent, man. They're well coached, so they're going to be fine. I feel like in the Big Ten, it was a lot of fun game. We got some Oregon, Maryland coming up soon, buddy. We gotta
get nervous, buddy. We're coming.
Do we take you gonna fly out to Maryland for that game? We're gonna get a game together.
To watch them lose by 60 points? Probably not. I think I'll stick around here. Maybe when they come and play USC or UCLA, I think that would be.
So Maryland, let me see. Where's Maryland at? Maryland, here we go. Maryland plays at Oregon this year, 2024.
That I'd be more likely to go to and go with you.
At UCLA in 25, at USC in 26, at Washington in 27.
Yeah, we'll see. It's so weird to see that. Definitely check out some college basketball with when Maryland goes to UCLA and stuff. UCLA is right down the street. Speaking of Oregon, 800-pound follower. His name is B Fan. Love this guy already. He asks, how can the Senior Bowl reports on Bo Nix be so wildly different? I'm really curious what you make of that.
Yeah, great question. Senior Bowl, East West Shrine are happening right now, and those are all college all-star games, right? And so we get to watch a little bit of it on television, and then there's film that's given out. I have access to film if I want to watch it on the practice. So you get reports, Matt, from the field. Okay, this happened, and then people go back and watch the film, and they give a different report without telling you, okay, I've watched the film on said guy. So you might see a couple of plays that are bad, go watch the film, you realize, oh, the wide receiver didn't run the right route, or something, there was pressure in his face. That's why the reports vary so much. And of course, different people look for different things, right? Some evaluate a player for this reason, some evaluate a player for that reason. And so not everyone is evaluating the same guy with the same eyeballs. Matt, me and you might watch Bo Nix play. I think he's great. You think he sucks. We watch the same exact throws. And so bias plays a role in how this is covered. And so that I think is why we get different reports on what happened. I have not watched much Senior Bowl outside of some of the offensive linemen, so I couldn't tell you what exactly. It doesn't really spark my interest to watch the seventh best college quarterback playing a Senior Bowl. But it's I know a lot of people love it. It's draft season. We'll be talking draft soon. We have our favorite episode. I think we do every year is our little mock draft. We do it near draft time. So that's why there's just different eyeballs, man, and everyone sees things differently.
Yeah, same thing seems to be happening with Penix, and that one's a little more complicated because of his health history.
Yes,
but mixed bag on Penix, right?
Yeah. So he's been pretty hurt at previous to Washington, and I think part of it too with Penix is that he basically played 2 games a year where he got hit, the first Oregon game and the Michigan game. And he left both those games like pretty beat up. And it's not great when your quarterback gets hit in 2 games essentially and leaves those games with injuries. They'll never say it, but I think he broke his ribs against Oregon the first time. It's what it feels like. And then he got, the Michigan game, he walked off the field in a lot of pain again. So you just don't want to see that from your quarterback, right? That, national football, you hit a lot no matter where you go.
Yep. Yeah, that's going to be tricky. I'm going to simplify Zach's question here, where he asked to rank the quarterbacks long term. Let's just hit the rookies here, and then maybe we can put in Trevor Lawrence as the 4th, just for sort of a barometer here. So let's rank these 4: Caleb, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and let's just say Trevor Lawrence, who we'll say is a very promising young quarterback who also isn't lighting the league on fire. Let's call him the median. How would you rank those 4?
I see the question here. I actually think that we should include Fields because this is the discussion the Bears are going to have, right? Like, is it Caleb Williams or Justin Fields? I think Caleb Williams is better than Justin Fields. I think you would go like Caleb, probably Lawrence. As far as prospects, or like Lawrence as he is now.
Rank these QBs long term.
Okay,
I guess picture yourself doing a Madden franchise draft.
Yeah, I would probably do Williams, Lawrence, May, Daniels, Fields is what I would kind of go with. Yeah.
Interesting. Where are you? So Fields makes sense to me to be the lowest there. I'm curious what you think about Jaden Daniels. It seems like there are some people who are really gassing him up. He could have one of those combines where he really pops.
Oh yeah.
But that one, he's one where I feel like, this has happened before. I don't want to put this out there, especially because my team is picking second. But you remember how Mitch Trubisky, it kind of was like he sucked, and then he had one really awesome season, and everyone was like, man, it's a little different, obviously, because Daniels obviously won the Heisman, but there's this feeling of like, oh, this guy like came out of nowhere, and look at his athletic ability, look at his talent. Yeah. Is this the kind of guy who can come in and just continue to sort of like hockey stick growth his way to the top here? I don't know. It seems very interesting to me.
It feels like one of those things where like Caleb Williams, I think, will be good anywhere, but Jaden Daniels will be good where he's got to go to the right place to be good, right? Most of these quarterbacks do. Like Williams to me is that good where he'd be good anywhere, but Jaden Daniels, I feel like he's got to go to the right place for him.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably true of May as well.
Yeah.
Although he certainly looks the part. But Jaden Daniels is, obviously he's amazing. Let's do these last 2. Arthur Smith, from this one's from FM Zhang. Did Arthur Smith's system make Tannehill good? Could he do the same for the Steelers quarterback, who we assume is Kenny Pickett, but we're not sure.
Yeah. Good question. We'll end with this one, by the way. I know we said 2 more, but I gotta take my kids somewhere real quick, Matt. So Arthur Smith question's a good one. To me, I need to see a little bit more of a complex passing attack from him to feel good about like winning Super Bowls. Does that make sense? Like in Tennessee, it was so run heavy, play action heavy. and they had that one deep run, Matt, where Henry was in his prime, and Ryan Tannehill was sort of making that comeback player of the year status, right? Remember Mariota was starting there, and then Ryan Tannehill, and then it just like fell off a cliff. Like now part of that was Arthur Smith leaving, of course, but how sustainable? It felt a lot like what Greg Roman did with the Ravens. Like it's good till you play a playoff game. It's good like till you play the better defenses. And I got to see a little bit more from him as far as like just developing the passing attack for me to feel good about what he'll do in Pittsburgh. Plus, I mean, Kenny Pickett to me, again, like look at the AFC. Look at his division. Lamar, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Tua, Herbert with Harbaugh, Mahomes. Like they're not going to win with Kenny Pickett.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, I think it's like fail faster, tear it down. We'll see. It's a funny pick because the Steelers are like the most frustrating offense ever, and now they add the guy who didn't give Bijan Robinson the ball. So I'm looking forward to him torturing fantasy owners just in a new uniform.
All right, Matt. We're going to do gambler recap. We could do that at the end of the year because we're still going to gamble next week. I'm sorry my dog interrupted some of the show today, guys. He's very excitable. Apologies. I know. I got to go take my kid to do some events. All right, guys. Have a great weekend without football. We'll be back on Tuesday in person, live, all of us together. We're going to have a lot of fun down at the Blue Duck Studios. We'll talk to you guys on Tuesday. Have a great weekend, everyone.